single gunshot shatters the silence of the night. Then another, and another. The streets of Dallas erupt into chaos. Officers drop one by one. No one knows where the bullets are coming from. No one knows how many shooters there are. The police scramble for cover, but there is no safe place. This is a hunt, and they are the prey. The man behind the rifle is not an ordinary criminal. He's a war veteran, highly trained, with a single objective: kill police officers. With lethal precision, he moves between buildings, setting up ambushes. Every bullet he fires finds a target. In just 5 minutes, 3 officers lie dead. And this is only the beginning. The city is under siege. The gunman is still on the move. And the Dallas police are facing an enemy unlike anything they've encountered before. For the next 6 hours, the streets will become a war zone. This is not the script of an action movie. This really happened on July 7th, 2016, but the most shocking part of this story isn't how it began, it's how it ended. A conclusion so extreme that the police had to make an unprecedented decision, one that changed law enforcement tactics forever. Before we continue, subscribe and turn on notifications, because this story will leave you breathless. The streets were packed with protesters. Hours earlier, thousands had gathered downtown to march against police brutality following the deaths of 2 African-American men at the hands of officers in Louisiana and Minnesota. Their deaths had ignited nationwide outrage. People demanded justice. The atmosphere in Dallas was peaceful, no riots, no violence, just voices raised in protest. Families walked together, young people held signs. The police were there, not to stop them, but to ensure their safety. 100 officers had been deployed to monitor the demonstration. By 8:30 p.m., most protesters were heading home. It seemed like the night would end without incident. But someone was waiting. A few blocks from the protest, a man sat inside a black SUV, watching, waiting, planning. His name was Micah Xavier Johnson, a former U.S. Army soldier with combat training. He wasn't there to march. He wasn't there to protest. He had been planning this moment for months. Johnson wasn't looking for an escape route. He didn't want to run. He had one goal: kill as many police officers as possible. Inside his vehicle, next to him, lay his weapons: an AR-15 assault rifle, several handguns, a bulletproof vest. Everything was ready. All he needed was the perfect moment to strike. And when the protest began to wind down, when officers were scattered, unaware of the danger, he knew it was time. At 8:50 p.m., Johnson stepped out of his SUV. He left the headlights on, maybe to draw attention, maybe as a signal to himself. He took a deep breath, checked his rifle. Then he raised his weapon. Boom! The first shot rang out like thunder in the night. Seconds later, the once peaceful protest had turned into a battlefield, and the hunt had begun. Dallas, 8:50 p.m. The streets were clearing, the protest was over, and people were heading home. Police officers stood at intersections, directing the last few groups of marchers. They thought their job was done, but someone was watching. Micah Xavier Johnson was already in position. He adjusted his bulletproof vest, loaded his AR-15, and scanned the street. He was looking for his first target. A group of officers stood together near a traffic light, talking casually. They had no idea that at that very moment a trained shooter had them in his sights. Boom! The first shot echoed through the streets. One officer collapsed instantly, dead before he even hit the ground. For a second, the others hesitated. A firecracker, a car backfiring, boom, boom! Another officer dropped. This was no accident. A sniper was hunting them. The remaining officers pulled their weapons, but they had no idea where to aim. The streetlights and the shadows of the buildings created the perfect camouflage for Johnson. He could see them. They couldn't see him. With deadly precision, he fired again. Boom, boom, boom. In just 5 minutes, 3 officers lay dead. 2 more were critically wounded. The crowd erupted in chaos. People screamed, ran in all directions. Nobody knew where the bullets were coming from. Nobody knew how to escape. The police were at a complete disadvantage. 1. They didn't know the shooter's location. 2. They only had handguns, while Johnson had an assault rifle with greater range. Red 3. He had military training. They were prepared for crowd control, not urban warfare. One officer spotted movement behind a pillar. Contact, contact! But before he could react, boom, he went down. Johnson was executing a perfect ambush. He moved quickly, firing, then disappearing into cover. He never stayed in one place for more than a few seconds. The Dallas police had never faced an attacker like this before. In just 10 minutes, the city had gone from peace to absolute war. And the hunt was only beginning. Boom, boom, another shot, another victim. The sound of the AR-15 echoed between the buildings of downtown Dallas. The police officers were falling one by one. But this wasn't random violence. Every move Johnson made was calculated. Unlike an ordinary criminal who shoots in panic and confusion, he knew exactly what he was doing. He hid in the shadows. He changed positions after every shot. He never stayed exposed for more than a few seconds. This wasn't just an attack. This was a military-style ambush. 8:55 p.m. Downtown Dallas was in complete chaos. Civilians screamed and ran in every direction. Officers were confused, unable to locate the shooter. Some tried to help evacuate the public. Others stood frozen, trying to figure out where to aim, but Johnson knew exactly where to shoot. He used the panic as cover. Then he found his next target, Announcer Officer Brent Thompson. Thompson had taken cover behind a column, trying to find a safer position. He had no idea he had already been marked for death. Johnson spotted him. He moved in slowly, like a predator stalking its prey. When he got within just a few feet, he slipped around the side of the column and fired at point-blank range. Boom, boom, boom! It was an execution. Thompson collapsed instantly. His last thought was of his wife. They had just gotten married. But Johnson didn't even pause. He stepped over his fallen victim and kept moving, his rifle ready for the next target. What Johnson didn't know was that someone had caught everything on camera. From the balcony of a nearby apartment, a resident recorded the horrifying moment as Thompson was gunned down. That footage, disturbing and brutal, would later become key evidence showing just how methodical and precise Johnson was. 9 p.m. All units. Active shooter. Repeat. Active shooter. The officers who had initially thought this was just a riot getting out of control now understood the truth. This wasn't a protest gone wrong. This wasn't a random shooter. This was an ambush. And the worst part? Johnson wasn't done yet. He was still moving, still hunting. Dallas was about to experience one of the bloodiest nights in its history. All units, active shooter. Officers down. We need backup now. The radios crackled with panic. Dallas was under attack. The first officers on the scene had no idea what they were up against. They had been assigned to monitor a peaceful protest, not to engage in a gunfight with a trained killer. This wasn't a random shooter. This wasn't a gang dispute. This was a soldier on a mission. Micah Xavier Johnson moved like a ghost in the dark. Every shot he fired was precise. Every movement was calculated. Boom, boom. Another officer went down, more blood on the pavement. We need more units now. The Dallas Police Department was losing control of the situation. Step 1, locate the shooter. Step 2, secure the area. Step 3, neutralize the threat. But there was a problem. Red. No one knew exactly where Johnson was. From above, a police helicopter scanned the streets with thermal cameras. We have a visual. The suspect is moving near Lamar Street, using the buildings as cover. The SWAT team was deployed immediately. This was no longer just a police operation. This was urban warfare. 9:30 p.m. Downtown Dallas was a ghost town. Civilians had either fled or were hiding in fear. Now it was just the police and Johnson, and then everything changed. Until this moment, Johnson had been on the move, but now he stopped. Suspect has entered a building. Looks like the Centro College campus. The officers saw him disappear inside. They had him cornered. But that didn't mean he was trapped. He had cover, he had weapons, and he had nothing to lose. If they charged in blindly, more officers would die. We need a strategy. We can't let him take out more of us. The Dallas Police Department knew they had one chance to end this. But a cornered soldier is the most dangerous enemy you can face. And the battle inside the building was about to be unlike anything they had ever seen. Suspect has entered Centro College. He's cornered, but he's still armed and extremely dangerous. The radios crackled with tension. Micah Xavier Johnson was inside, but that didn't mean he was trapped. He was a soldier. He knew how to hold his ground. He knew how to kill. And now he had the perfect battleground, a dark enclosed building filled with hallways, rooms, and ambush points. 9:45 p.m. The SWAT team arrived. They knew that if they rushed in recklessly, they would be walking into a death trap. Outside, snipers took positions on surrounding rooftops, scanning the windows. Inside, the silence was deafening. We're going in. Stay alert. 10 p.m. The first officers stepped inside the building. The lights flickered. The hallways were lined with shattered glass. Every shadow could be hiding death. Johnson had already shot through the glass doors to force his way inside. Then, boom! Boom! Gunfire erupted. Johnson was firing from the second floor, forcing the police to take cover. His bullets tore through the thin walls, striking an officer in the stomach. "Officer down, we need medical assistance." But paramedics couldn't reach them. The suspect was still armed. He still had ammunition, and he wasn't giving up. 10:30 p.m. The officers pushed Johnson back into a computer lab. He's barricaded inside. No way out. But that didn't make him less dangerous. Rushing in would be suicide. Waiting too long would put more lives at risk. The police decided to try negotiation. Sergeant Larry Gordon took the radio. "Micah, you're surrounded. Surrender now, and no one else has to die." "No. You can't win this, Micah. Put the gun down." "I'm not going anywhere. You kill our people. Now it's our turn." His voice was cold. He wasn't scared. "Micah, this is your last chance. Come out with your hands up. Number. The revolution has started." That's when the officers realized something terrifying. He wasn't trying to escape. He wasn't afraid to die. He wanted this to end here. If the police stormed the room, more officers would die. We need another option. Fast. 10:45 p.m. We have one last option, but it's extreme. They were about to make a decision unlike anything in U.S. law enforcement history. The suspect is still barricaded inside the computer lab. He's not responding to orders. He's still armed. The police had a problem. Micah Xavier Johnson was not surrendering. He wasn't negotiating. He wasn't asking for an escape. He was waiting. Waiting for the police to storm the room so he could take more officers with him. If they went in, more officers would die. If they waited too long, Johnson could regroup and keep fighting. They had to make a decision. And what they did next would change law enforcement history forever. We're going to use the robot. The robot? Yes. A bomb disposal robot from the SWAT team. But this time it wasn't going in to disable a bomb. It was going to deliver one. This was an extreme solution, something never before used in an active shooter situation in the United States. But the police had no other options. Load the C4. The SWAT team attached an explosive charge to the robot. It was a risky plan. If Johnson saw the robot approaching, he might shoot it before it got close enough. If the explosion wasn't precise, it could leave him injured and still able to fight. Move it in slowly. Make it look like a standard recon mission. The goal was to get the robot close enough without alarming Johnson. The device is ready, awaiting final authorization. 2:20 a.m. The officers exchanged looks. They knew this was a historic moment. Proceed. The robot rolled forward, its camera transmitting live footage. Johnson was still inside. Target in sight. He's sitting against the wall, rifle on his lap. He looked calm. He's waiting for us. Has he seen the robot? No reaction yet. The robot advanced. Countdown 10 seconds. 10. It moved within a few feet of Johnson. 9. He lifted his head slightly. 8, 7, 6. He reached for his rifle. He's going to fire. 5. Johnson leaned forward. 4, 3, 2. Detonate now. 1. The blast rocked the building. Glass shattered. The shockwave echoed through the hallways. Suspect down. Repeat, suspect down. SWAT officers moved in cautiously. It was over. Micah Xavier Johnson was dead. For the first time in U.S. history, a police robot with explosives had been used to eliminate a shooter. But the decision sparked an immediate controversy. Suspect down, repeat suspect down. The radio call echoed through the empty streets of Dallas. After 6 hours of terror, the Dallas massacre was finally over. Micah Xavier Johnson was dead. The Dallas Police Department had just made history. For the first time ever, a bomb-equipped police robot was used to neutralize a shooter. But while the immediate threat was gone, the damage had already been done. 5 police officers were dead. 8 others were seriously wounded. The city was left traumatized. 3 a.m. The bodies of the fallen officers were carefully removed from the scene. A painful silence replaced the chaos of gunfire. Ambulance sirens echoed in the distance. News crews had arrived, broadcasting the aftermath to the entire nation. The headlines were immediate. The deadliest attack on U.S. law enforcement since 9/11. A decorated veteran turned mass shooter. Could this have been prevented? Who was Micah Xavier Johnson? Over the next few days, investigators pieced together his past. He was a former U.S. Army engineer. He had served in Afghanistan. He had been honorably discharged after a sexual harassment complaint. At his home, police discovered an arsenal of weapons, ammunition, and writings filled with anti-police rhetoric. This was not a random act of violence. This was planned for months. But the biggest question was, could it have been stopped? If authorities had detected his radicalization earlier, maybe. If someone in his life had recognized the warning signs, perhaps. But sometimes tragedies like these unfold without any clear warning. Then came the debate over the robot bomb. The police's decision to use a robot equipped with explosives sparked intense controversy. Was it a necessary tactical move? Or had law enforcement crossed a dangerous line? Some argued that it was the only way to end the standoff without risking more officers' lives. Others feared that this set a dangerous precedent for the use of military-style tactics in domestic policing. Had this opened the door for future cases where police could use robotic weapons against suspects? Dallas Police Chief David Brown defended the decision. We had no choice. We were not going to risk more lives. But the debate continued for months. The Dallas massacre would forever be remembered, not just for the horror of the attack, but for how it ended. A single night that changed police tactics forever. A night of terror that Dallas will never forget. On July 7, 2016, Dallas experienced its darkest night. 5 police officers killed, 8 others wounded. A former soldier turned into a mass murderer. The first time in U.S. history that a police robot was used to kill a suspect. But after the gunfire, after the explosion, there were more questions than answers. What drove Micah Xavier Johnson to carry out this attack? Some believed it was fueled by frustration over police brutality. Others pointed to his military background, to untreated trauma, a broken mind that found in violence its only escape. Could this tragedy have been prevented? The truth is complicated. If authorities had recognized the warning signs, maybe. If someone in his circle had noticed his erratic behavior, perhaps, but sometimes these attacks happen without a clear warning. And what about the use of the robot bomb? This decision remains controversial. Some say it was the only way to stop the threat without more casualties. Others argue that it marked the beginning of a dangerous militarization of the police. Should technology like this be used in future law enforcement operations? Or did this set a precedent that could spiral out of control? One thing is certain, the Dallas massacre changed the way law enforcement handles active shooters. Policing is no longer just about officers on the front lines. Now technology plays a key role in decision-making, and that night technology was what ended the massacre. But the real question is, when will it happen again? Because if history has taught us anything, it's that this will happen again. The only unknowns are where and when. If this case impacted you, hit the like button and subscribe for more stories like this. And let me know in the comments, did the police make the right call in using the robot? Or do you think they crossed a dangerous line? Your opinion matters. See you in the next video.